everybody who decided to attend today's event. Thank you to our speakers. We invited those who wished to come in order to discuss rather simple but rather complicated story. Whether the government, journalists, and experts can whether these three groups of people can come to agreement about basic things, about reforms, and to explain the advantages of reform to broad public. When we raise awareness of broad public, we deal not with those people who are experts in the economics, but we deal with people who do not trust the government and parliament, because surveys prove that the level of trust to ruling institutions is very low. Here we do not wish to discuss the collusions behind closed doors. We discuss the basic grounds. And now my question to the experts, whether we can improve communication of reforms and improve communication of the advantages of reforms in case we unite our efforts. So we have Mr. Anton Yaschenko, Executive Director of the Reforms Office, Iryna Solomko, Head of the Reanimation Package of Reforms, Pavlo Kukhta, member of the Strategic Advisors Group under the Cabinet of Ministers, and Mr. Kobets, expert of the Working Group on Government E-Governance Policies Development. We also are waiting for Ms. Larysa Mudrak, an expert in communications. I would like to start from Anton. The majority of people working in the House of Government and who are happy to speak about the raise in pensions and wages. What can explain better to people?
Good afternoon. I'd like to start my speech with more general concepts. I believe that improved efficiency of communications and constructive dialogue between the government and parliament and analytical studies centers and experts community is important. And as a representative of the cabinet, I would like to share with you that from the very first days of our activities, it was in January 2017, we joined a midterm plan until 2020. Many people thought among governmental officers that this is yet another document for 500 pages which do not differ from other documents. I have another opinion. It is a normative act of the regulatory act of the cabinet which gives a roadmap to all politicians on all areas of policies, and a very efficient tool for the government as to concerns coordination of their actions and for experts as well. For example, if experts working in the energy sector may see initiatives of the Ministry of Energy countering the plan, they can base their recommendations on this document and maximum use it in activities. Telling about individual cases, ad hoc cases of efficient or not communications, my opinion is we should have constructive dialogue always. When I was a top manager of a think tank center, it is very difficult to maintain balance, not to criticize the government in general or some individual governmental officials. And I would like to share my experience that sometimes we want to engage experts, but as the experts for several times already passed the red lines, they could not be engaged. Politicians do not want to work with think tanks or experts who criticize them individually. I have a specifying question to you. From your experience of work with the ministers or deputy ministers and politicians, how we can persuade them not to play populism. This intention is very often demonstrated by them. I think I'll better give you some example. Can you give an example of inefficient communication? Yesterday's decision on 700 hryvnias to be given for savings, it was like Yulia's 1,000, but it could be the first step to systemic activities on monetization of subsidies, a huge step ahead. I think this is an exception from the rule, because looking into the decisions made in the energy efficiency area, we see here very good communications and cooperation with donors and the expert community. This is the period when the government in general, they try to demonstrate the achievements very fast, and sometimes they do not communicate these decisions. We should change the situation and communicate this. As concerns the monetization efforts, we will establish a public awareness campaign to demonstrate what monetization means. I'm giving the floor to Reanimation package of reforms representative. Some ministers, they said that the balance should be in place, not to criticize just the minister. Reanimation package of reforms is a coalition, but not organization. This is a coalition of NGOs. I would like to respond to Mr. Anton as concerns constructive dialogue. This is a very alarming signal. Critics and constructive dialogue, they not clear-cut scenes. Politics, this is the art of understanding there are many challenges and how to face them. We have ministers who do not want to give interviews to some certain mass media sources. Some politicians do not go to some mass media sources because they were criticized by them. If you are a mature adult person, then you will not do so. A triangle between mass media, government, and public is the triangle when the efforts are joined between all the stakeholders, then the changes will be possible. There is no cooperation so far. I recognize this. We as a general public, we are between mass media and government, and being in between, we try to communicate with different mass media sources. All of them understand us and try not to play populism, not to use populistic messages, not to support government, but look for the problems which should be resolved. I do not have enough mass media representatives. I lack in them at this event. We have at least 4 editors-in-chief. We will have one more panel. We have very transparent discussion. But there are no so-called stars who we know from Facebook, but they are on the other planet. Those people who are ready to talk, we will be able to listen to their opinions. I am very open to understand what mass media sources want from experts to give them. Just ask questions. We are absolutely open. I have been on this post for 1 year, and I tried to expand the network of our contacts with mass media. We print our blogs in the internet. We have also other audience at Levy Bereg mass media source. We understand that we need to communicate to public to describe. This would secure us small steps forward to our goal. Restrictions that concern government, they are not always willing to go to round-table discussions. We try to organize round-table discussions. We never base our opinions on that the experts always right. We are not always right or correct. It is 50-50. 50 politicians are ready to take part in roundtable discussion and 50% are not. Sometimes they do not like some platforms, some politicians do not know what to tell. We do not have communication with the presidential administration. There was only one person, Mr. Filatov, who communicated with us. Well, we understand this is the place where decisions are made, and how they are made. It is important for us and for the society. So we want our government, our authorities to be more open, to maintain dialogue with us. I am from mass media source myself. Of course, there is a commercial component in mass media industry. I want now journalists to tell what they lack from us, from civil society. What do they need from us, from the civil society? And we want our information to be communicated and disseminated by mass media. At 3 o'clock there will be panel discussion where editors-in-chief will take part mostly. We have Pavlo Kukhta at this event. Whether the trust in this triangle, lack of trust in this triangle, can this mistrust be changed? Can it be changed? Yeah, this is the problem of our country everywhere.
This is a transitional problem. Any communication under the circumstance, it is more difficult done without this mistrust. Society in general do not trust politicians, media, and experts. In general, people do not trust more or less, and we nevertheless try to tackle the myths and mythology which shaped and has been being shaped for dozens of years. For example, when people receive gas bills which equal to their monthly wage, and they actually do not pay for these bills because it is covered by the subsidy, then the expert appears explaining that that's all right. Nevertheless, they feel that something is not all right. On the other hand, there are some deeper problems about which we should understand that this deeper problem would not disappear somehow by itself. We have to strengthen reputation. We have to carry out moderation. UCMC is a good example. Let's take UCMC and political talk show on Friday. While in UCMC you invite experts with good reputation, you moderate the discussion at more or less professional level, and people can hear about more real situation. Nevertheless, on Friday, political show in prime time, there is no moderator. This is just a show. There is no discussion. You cannot get information what's going on. You can just get an impression of chaos and conflict between politicians. So you believe that availability of independent venue without any political affiliation could allow the problem of mistrust. I understand. Yes, I agree with you. And as far as I know, that's not just the problem of Ukraine. I mean, the mistrust in many countries. TV shows still remain the problem, and quite often they appeal to emotions and strengthen stereotypes instead of explaining people the real situation. I do not have any recipes how to treat the situation, how to cure this bad phenomena. But now we discuss how to establish constructive discussion between different parts of the society. it is important to have proper institutions among which the discussion is going on. They have to ensure a proper level of discussion. And when we invite to such discussion people who were discredited long ago, who were caught upon corruption cases, who were and when we invite them, we ruin constructive discussion, and we ruin good public discussion around which the communication is built. Those who organize and moderate Friday political shows, they are as responsible for bad distrust towards politicians and experts in society as those who participate in those shows. Now I have a question to Mr. Kobets. I understand that Friday political show is much easier than well-informed discussion. So how do you think where we can find a clue to this situation? I think that this is a question to me as a philosopher. I have a philosophical background. I believe that Ukraine suffers from specific distortion of discourse in the area of politics. All politicians present any action and any decision from a distorted perspective. And politicians tend to distort each decision from the point of view of not an action to be taken by this decision, via this decision, but in the view of an actor and the intention or disclosure of some abuse. Another extreme of our public administrators are our administrative managers, our bureaucrats who continue to speak about resolutions, norms, laws, etc., which do not reflect the impact on that legislation on our lives. So everywhere in the world, people discuss policy in the following clue: the problem, the alternative solutions, and the outcomes. And this would allow people to understand better what the government tries to do, and to understand to which extent to which extent the interests of those people are taken into account by the government, and thus understanding what is planned to achieve may raise trust, because when people do not understand, they do not have trust. Or sometimes it's easy to suspect some manipulation or corruption. So if we wish to we should step back from this intention to disclose some crimes, or to, and at the same time step back from norms, rules, legislation, and this would require very strong moderation from and mediation from the mass media. I would like to respond after Larysa. Larysa, you are in a unique position. You had the chance to observe the process from inside And now you're observing this process from outside. Of course, we do not wish to change the elite fully. Of course, we cannot change the broad public fully, but the question to you, how we can bring those two parts together. I would like to provide three cases. The first case was from 1995 when I worked for Radio Liberty in Prague. It was Václav Havel, and he during presidential race he had good American political technologist. Madeleine Albright was part of the process, and we had very good pull for the presidency. Havel founded 5 reforms which he managed to implement within 1 year of his presidency, and he nationalized the biggest objects of historical heritage to the descendants who had proofs of ownership in the past. They freely got that heritage and this brought investments to the country. And Václav Havel also was an heir in Václav suburb. There was the sugar plot. There was the property where the stained glasses were decorated by Alphonse Mucha, by the way. Václav Havel also wanted to return his property to himself. And each month they kept coming and mentioned that he needs this property back because he had the grandchildren. As political technologies, they were very tough. And by the way, Václav Havel failed to bring this property back to him. In 2007, I was head of the Department of Informational Policy under Yaschenko, under President Yaschenko administration, and the press service was already formed, and there was training for press service in the United Kingdom. We spent 2 weeks in the Prime Minister's office, and we got full access to the process, how communication is built up inside the UK government. And at that time, the United Kingdom was implementing e-government, and they were changing all the governmental resources. So the reform was as follows. Having entered each e-resource, one single governmental resource where you entered your problem, and then the computer brought you to the agency which was responsible for your problem. What was interesting, there was total advertising everywhere about e-governance. By the way, internet was not so much spread at that time. There was total advertising everywhere. The Ministry of Advertising and Information was responsible for this, and it based on the principle 50-50. 50% were funded from the state, and 50% were funded from the advertising agencies, because it was beneficial for them to have communication with the state agencies. Community was happy to get this governmental communication everywhere. Within that 2 weeks, we had millions of chances to see that advertising. The technical e-government startup was implemented within 3 months, and they continued trainings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the third case is from my experience, which was rather painful to me. When I worked as a head of the Yaschenko's press administration between 2005-2010, and I also lived in my office. I had all my clothes there, and I lived there. Nevertheless, I managed to survive. I think it's good that I managed to survive. Then, once there was a story called The Freedom of Speech in Yaschenko Style. In 2008, we tried to introduce online Twitter in the presidential press conferences. I think that the quarterly 2-hour press conferences should be the must for presidents. We had that quarterly press conferences. It was not Yaschenko, but it was Arseniy Yatsenyuk who started to contribute to Ukrainian Twitter. We introduced tweet online in course of press conference. And that Twitter was broken all the time. And SBU was unable to repair that Twitter. The best question had to win. And the question, the winning question was when Yaschenko will go to space. There was a scandal, one scandal, then second scandal, but the worst thing that we decided to say the truth, and we decided to publish the truth. Provided to us SBU, that Russian hackers and the Russian special services contributed much to this story, and people did not trust to us. And one of press agencies organized to us a scandalous campaign. We were persecuted. I wrote around 15 suggestions how we should explain the truth, and the secretariat and the analysts rejected to disseminate this truth. And now to your question, I have learned two major rules for the public opinion. I think that today the situation is the worst possible. Nobody trusts to the power, the third year in power. Everybody started to fight against each other, but there should be discipline. There should be the feeling that you should not be number one. You should be number 5 or number 10 in this fight for power. And the understanding of the overall goal without all that, our excessive engagement into our own affairs would not result in positive things.
I would like to support Larysa as concerns Václav Havel, our politicians, our ministers. They know what they do, they think so that they know what to do further. They do not need expert consultations. I would like to support journalists because always we should understand and hear everyone. To develop the best concepts and to do the best for different audiences, and our talk show reflects Ukrainian society. The most elitarian show in Ukraine is freedom of speech. It was the format was quite good when Andrei Kulikov was a speaker. As far as I know, the channel maintains balanced approach, because for TV channels the main thing is its rating points. So we experts who communicate, politicians who communicate, they need to understand. We need to give such messages which our audience can understand. And now politicians do not want to talk to people in the language which will be understandable. Thank you. I can finalize this dialogue saying that every speaker said about classical scenes, support to the strategy, adherence to the strategy, adherence to the standards of quality in our efforts. We need some time so we can start the round of question and answers. Andriy Bogdanovich. I represent regions. I am linked to Kropyvnytsky, Zaporizhzhia regional TV channels. I have comment on reforms in governments and the behavior of European Commission in regions. We created the talk show in Kropivnitsky. I will speak Russian. In Zaporizhia, we lack experts. They are afraid to talk. They are in fear, like in Soviet times. We should either break the system. They are the same people which were 20 years ago. They are professional, but they are afraid to tell something very plain. We can't we can't get any experts from the capital. They do not respond to our invitations. In Zaporizhia, there was a grand story when the European Commission we hosted a talk show with European values and best practice examples. We needed European experts, and David Stulik was the only person who appeared. He is just a press secretary. He is not an expert. Expert didn't come. We needed European experts who will be able also to communicate their messages in the language which will be understandable to ordinary people. Yes, I agree with you, but civil servants, they talk not in understandable language to general public. Do you have an idea how can we cover the regions? How can we ensure the outreach in the regions? I will tell a few words. One of the tasks of our team is to assist with communication of reforms, to help Ukrainian society, to help the government with communicating the reforms. Yet there is vacuum in regions. This is understandable and quite visible. This is not only a problem, this is also the possibility via regional mass media. People really watch them, these regional TV channels. They are in demand. Local communities demand this information. In Kiev, for example, there is no such demand. TV channels may just serve political interests. And they have the demand in regions, and there are several projects. I know since 2014, UCMC and the RPR has been carrying out some projects. This is the 21st century, and state-of-the-art technologies can help us to invite Kiev experts and to scale their messages in regions. So using this channel, we can disseminate information. Sometimes our central mass media sources are controlled by political groups, and they are also oversaturated. Political shows have low ratings, while some other entertainment shows they are high. I am not an expert in ratings. Political shows demonstrated low ratings. scores. As concerns the regional strategy, I understand what our experts are talking about. Half a year ago, I had first experience when I became the head of communications department. I was in disparity when I talked to some regional journalists. The demand, the request was, what should we talk about, how we should communicate, and why, and how Europeans will pay to us for communicating the reforms. This is the way nowhere. When journalists want to be paid for communicating the reforms, I didn't expect such opinion, such situation. We deliver workshops to journalists in regions. We want to deliver monthly workshops to expand our activities. Not all journalists are covered in Kiev with our trainings. But we want to cover both Kiev-based and region-based journalists. We have 300 experts. This is not few. So if you are interested, please contact us. Don't hesitate. The journalists from regions. Pavlo said it is easier to breathe there. I do not agree. Every small oligarch in a region has his own opinion, and journalists do not have room to tell their own opinions. I'd like to add, and do not agree, the stand concerning funding. We should say openly at the central level that all think tanks and experts are funded quite well. There are some champions who get more than 90% of funding year by year, and other think tanks, they do not get finance. And it is very hard to get funding in the region. You should then write materials by government authorities' requests. As far as I know, European delegation to Ukraine and USAID, they propose grants to regional NGOs and experts. This is very right area, very correct area, because we experience deficit of high quality experts as compared to Kiev, but I can prove that the dynamics is observed. I understand those experts. They were not experts, they were journalists who the question was about journalists. Well, the question is not to have the cases with the decentralization when local self-governments do not know how to spend, how to disburse the funding which is available. We will continue our discussion in the other format. We will have the next panel discussion. Gleb Vyshlinsky.